Going on, Roasters? It's Brian Baldinger with the NFL Network, and you're listening to the Morning Roast with Bonte and Shasky on 95.7 The Game.
Oh, Brian Baldinger is going to join us. 14 minutes, go nowhere. I can't wait to talk to him about the 49ers-Seahawks matchup. I'm super fired up. Shout out to YouTube, Twitch, and the Xfinity mobile text line. You guys all are just absolutely killing it right now. I see so many people in the comments section. Thank you so much. And I want to tell you guys, you can download the Odyssey app, 95.7 The Game. Thousands of other stations and millions of podcasts are free on the Odyssey app. Sports talk, music, news, podcasts are all available, and it's completely free. But you know the only reason to go on there is to listen to us.
Oh, yeah.
All right? So for whatever reason, if you're not listening on terrestrial radio and you don't have YouTube fired up and rocking and rolling, you could tell your Alexa to, basically fire up the Odyssey app, and let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready?
Ready to go.
Are you ready for this playoff run? Look, the Niners had opportunities in 3 years to win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. You can say, Joe, their best opportunity was when they were up 10 points in the fourth quarter of 2019 Super Bowl, which was in January 2020 against Patrick Mahomes. You wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this roster. This feels like their best, most complete offensive roster. I feel like when they're healthy, this might be their best defensive healthy roster. But I don't know where Dre Greenlaw's at right now, and I think that's a big missing piece because Alshire, although he's played well in the absence of Dre Greenlaw, these last 2 weeks it feels like he's been picked on a little, and I worry about him. I don't know how confident I feel right now about the secondary. I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with the pass rush. I feel much better about the secondary when the pass rush is humming. But this feels like their best overall, most complete roster. So I guess I'm going to say, even though I know how difficult the journey is because they'd have to go 3 games to get into the Super Bowl. In 2019, they only needed 2 because they had that bye. I feel like this is their best chance. I still feel, and it's wild I'm saying that because, yes, they got a rookie quarterback.
But I think that the term best chance, it doesn't necessarily mean perfect chance.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be a perfect chance.
None.
We could say, like we said, Trey Lance could be the guy next year, but chances are somebody else is going to drop off, right? Maybe you don't have Bosa, maybe you don't have Greenlaw, whoever the case is. So you're never going to have that perfect storm, but this is pretty darn close to it. And fortunately for the Niners, you have this opportunity now with a roster, and you were able, you could make the argument that maybe if you knew you had to go in this direction with the third string QB, at least Jimmy did get hurt when he did because Brock Purdy, he's got all the confidence in the world. He's out here doing the ice in my veins in Vegas, all these types of things. So he's ready to go. So it's never going to be perfect, Joe, but you got to cash in on one of these. There's no excuses. Every Super Bowl winner that probably has ever existed has at least probably 5 guys on the injured report. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
So as long as your stars aren't on it, the chances of that happening next season, the season after that, or having them in general and not getting poached somewhere else, you're never going to have it all. But this is pretty close to having it all.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they look primed and ready to go, and I just love that. At minimum, if they can handle business, they'll get the 2 home games. And that, to me, is a little better than having to travel back to the East Coast. Like last year, everyone's going to bring up, third time versus a divisional opponent against the Rams. It felt very different last year. They had to go to Dallas, come back home, go to Green Bay. Both of them, ridiculously difficult games, which I believe these next couple, even if they can win against Seattle, it's going to be a difficult game. There are no easy games in the playoffs. But staying home does matter. And playing in that cold last year at Green Bay, I felt like it took an effect on them in the fourth quarter of the LA game the following week. So they've got a great opportunity. They're primed in position. It feels like Kyle Shanahan's calling his best games. Like his play calling has been the best it's ever been as Niner coach. And it's because of the weaponry that he's got going. And I just keep coming back to CMC. Adding Christian McCaffrey has changed fundamentally how aggressive this offense is and how it opens the field up for everyone else.
Yeah. And I think one thing to remember when you talk about the run that the Niners went on last year, they were already they were struggling. So they had those winner-go-home games before the playoffs even started, and that can take a toll on you. So not only did they have to go to Dallas, go to Green Bay, then go to L.A., we know there were a bunch of Niner fans down there, but they had been playing at that level for weeks beforehand. This situation is different. You're at home. They've played well, don't get me wrong, but they haven't necessarily, we have to win to get in. So the level that they've needed to step to, I feel like they haven't even needed to get to it yet. So that's why I think this is a different situation than last season, even though you are going against a division opponent. for the third time. It's the first playoff game, not the third. So that's number one.
Yeah.
And number two, it's at home. And number three, let's be honest, those games against the Rams last season, okay, they were close. The Seahawks, even though it's gotten a little dicey.
First game was a blowout. First game was a blowout. The second game was a lot closer than we want to admit.
And it should have been, though.
Yeah, well, and if Diggs gets that interception on Brock, I think that game's completely different. But you can say that for a lot of games. Right. D4 doesn't jump off sides. Tom Brady doesn't beat Patrick Mahomes that first year. But I look at like Kansas City as a great example because last year you would think on paper this is their best chance to win a Super Bowl. Tyreek and Kelsey, they're at home, and you're facing an untested, quote-unquote, Cincinnati team, and they pooped themselves and lost in the second half, and they regret that. And then you come into this year, you don't got Tyreek. But yet I still feel really good about their situation. So to your point, things happen. Rosters change. It's never the same. Let's get into Pete Carroll for a second. I find him to be one of the most fascinating villains in Bay Area sports history. He's from here, number one.
Right.
So he's got the local ties and shunned the 49ers in 2005 when he was the USC coach. The rumor has it that Walsh told him to never go work for that team ever again. And he doesn't come here. And then a couple years later, he leaves USC. Obviously, they're facing sanctions. And he goes up to the Pacific Northwest and goes to Seattle. And he's had the Niners number for the majority of his career. And obviously has the big playoff win, which kind of put the stake through the heart of Jim Harbaugh and 49er fans, and they went to back-to-back Super Bowls, winning the one. He's a great villain in this tapestry that we're looking at of rivalry between Niners and Seahawks. Do you have him as one of the great villains of Bay Area sports history?
Yeah, because it's more about you have to have the whole package. And I think with Pete Carroll, it's the whole package. It's the fact that he's older. It's the fact that he's successful. It's the fact that he chews the gum.
Yeah,
it's
the gum.
Little
the dad
things
shoes.
like that. The dad shoes. All the things. You have to be hateable.
Yeah.
And we were going through the list. All right, well, who's hateable? I think we came up with maybe Doc Rivers, other guys like that. But
Doc's very hateable.
You know, Doc is hateable. But that was also just that whole Lob City team.
For sure.
Pete Carroll, doesn't matter who is under center, because you don't mind, obviously, because they're playing for the Seahawks, but Geno, great story.
I'm actually, like, from afar, when he's not playing us, I am rooting for Geno.
Exactly.
I am,
but
which is crazy to say.
You put him in that highlighter green, right, and you send him up north, and who's his coach? Pete Carroll smacking on that gum, and all of a sudden, you know what? Geno kind of annoys me. Just all of a sudden. Because that's the thing about those villains, they permeate throughout the whole team.
Yes.
They make you dislike guys that you would normally like. And I think Dave Roberts, he's very quiet. He's kind of easy to make fun of because of some of the decisions he makes. He doesn't do that for me. We talked about, if you're an A's person, Joe Torre. Again, I think it was the whole team with the Yankees, not just Joe Torre. Pete Carroll, to me, it just doesn't matter who else is on that team. Doesn't matter if they're not good or whatever. They could be awful. When you see Pete Carroll on the other sideline, you just get annoyed.
Yeah, I think for a long time, Bill Parcells was a guy that Niner fans hated. Bill, the big tuna, he was a swashbuckler yelling across the field at Bill Walsh. Jimmy Johnson, early 90s. If you're a kid that grew up in the 90s watching Niners Cowboys and you saw that hair on the sideline with that parka, you hated Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
How about them Cowboys? As he's lifting it. And obviously in baseball, you're going to go to Tommy Lasorda, but him being for the Dodgers and the biggest rival, like that to me just elevates that whole thing. But I look at football and I say it's Jimmy Johnson, it's Bill Parcells, and it's Pete Carroll. Like those are in my lifetime. Those are the coaches that I just couldn't stand. And it's simultaneous respect because of how great they were, and also me just not even like looking at their faces on the sideline.
Right, and there's only a couple guys that are gonna pull that out of you. I think number one, being a division opponent is a huge part of it. How about this? We haven't even mentioned a guy who we think he's still gonna. We don't know what's gonna happen with him. Sean McVay. Sean McVay is a guy
he's easily rising.
He's easily rising. He's similar to Shanahan. They're both the offensive guys. He gets up there, and I'm doing a terrible example, but he talks about a play that happened. Somebody leads him into it. He's probably paying them.
Yes.
Hey, tell us about this one random place so you can show off your memory. And he talks about his cereal from when he was in 5th grade, what he had on a random Tuesday morning. So that's a guy who's climbing up the ranks too, and again, another divisional opponent, but there are not very many that just invoke that feeling.
Yeah, it's just, McVay's such a great heel as well because he's got that whole LA SoCal vibe with the gelled hair spiked up, and he just looks like a frat bro.
And I think it's funny because, if you watch Rugrats or any of those old shows, there was always one episode where they would have a group, like the Rugrats group, that looked similar to the Rugrats, but they're all slightly different.
Yes.
That's like Shanahan and McVay.
I like
right?
that.
They're all just, they're like they're similar but different. Shanahan wears the hat, McVay has the gelled hair, but they're very, they're similar in what they do. So I think he's rising up, but unfortunately, there wasn't enough history there.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, we don't know what's going to happen.
I'm going to be very interested. And Baldy's going to join us in 3 minutes, so get ready. Brian Baldinger going to break down the 49ers. I've got a very specific question about Brock Purdy that I'm going to ask him that I want to hear his... I want to hear his opinion on this because he's watching the tape and he played in the league and he knows these things. But I'm curious how well the Seattle fans are going to travel to Levi's on a short week coming down to California. The tickets are expensive. It's going to be wet and rainy. They usually show up like Seattle Seahawks fans, like they do. Even in, I think it was week 2, the home opener against Seattle this year, it was wet and then the sun came out, and then it rained again, and the sun came out again. There were Seattle fans everywhere. I'll be very interested to see how much red versus how much dark blue is in that stadium.
Yeah, I think they will feel more at home with the weather, right? Seattle fans will, hey, it's like we didn't leave. But I don't know, man. The way the faithful has been, the way they travel other places, I just can't see the Seahawks fans really getting close to taking over or anything like that. I can't see it.
Well, it's going to be a great game because to me, when you have true rivalries, they're forged in the playoffs. The reason why I hate Bill Parcells, Niners and Giants were battling in the playoffs for years, and then they have obviously great regular season games. And why do I hate Jimmy Johnson? Because he kicked the Niners' butt in the NFC Championship game back-to-back years, and they never could beat him. He was a great coach. And so when I look at Pete Carroll, he's got that one playoff victory against the 49ers, and that chaps me. Now, I'll never get over that loss, but it'll help to have one win over him, even if it is not with the Legion of Boom, even if it's not with Russell Wilson. I want to knock him off. I want to have that upper hand against him in the playoffs.
Well, and I think going back to how the Seahawks fans will travel, one reason I think they might not travel as well is because, let's be honest. Every team thinks that their team has a shot, but they might not travel as well because they think they're going to get smacked.
Yeah. That's interesting. That particular fan base is very arrogant.
Right.
Undeservingly so. They're like a startup company, and so I find them very cute and funny, but their fan base is like irrationally confident all the time. So, by the way, Dave Softy Mahler, I don't know if you know this guy. Me and him went at it last year. He's a radio host up in Seattle. Joining Willard and Dibbs today at 10 o'clock. There will be fireworks at 10 o'clock. And we have Brian Baldinger joining us any minute now. But the Road to Glendale is brought to you by Mary West Credit Union, working for you today, tomorrow, together. The Brock Purdy thing is just, it's wild. It's really wild. I can't think of a better come up in sports locally in the Bay Area than what he's done, like the Earl Boykin story. If you're an old school Warrior fan, like, it was a great little story.
Yeah.
He wasn't the quarterback of the team.
Right.
He was an off the bench kind of like cute story. And I'm not trying to diminish Earl Boykins. He had fine moments in the NBA, but like, you could tell where that one was going, right? I can't think of anything like this. Ryan Vogelsong had a great story. Ryan Vogelsong coming out of nowhere. He wasn't the ace of the staff. He was like the fourth starter. You know what I mean? But ended up being an all-star, pitched 5.5 scoreless innings, 5 2/3 scoreless innings in a closeout game against St. Louis. Like he was amazing. Does anything in your recent memory come close to Brock Purdy?
Because of where he got drafted, not really. Right? I'm trying. Off the top of my head, Colin Kaepernick took the world by storm, but he was a second-round pick. Right?
Yes, he did take the world by storm. You're right. But like, was he 34th or 35th overall?
Yeah.
This guy was 262.
Steph had the whole underrated title, but he was underrated until he left college, right?
Even then he was the sixth pick.
Even then he was the sixth pick. So you look around, and a lot of these guys at some point got their cachet. We could go super random, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head when he got drafted, but the Pablo Sandoval hype was a little bit random.
Pablo Sandoval's a good one. He came out of nowhere. That's a really good one.
So there are a couple out there.
Draymond Green comes to mind.
Draymond.
I think Draymond's a good one because the equivalent of being Mr. Irrelevant is being like a late second-round pick, even though I think he was an early second-round pick. Like, that's as close as I can come to in the NBA. And he's put together a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what Brock ends up becoming. But, like, there's not a lot of precedent for this.
No, and you could even expand it from the Bay Area just in sports right now. What
Mike Piazza.
Since Brock Purdy, this is the best underdog story in sports since what?
Again, off the top of my head, I was thinking Mike Piazza because of coming out of nowhere. Cooper Kupp's a great one. Was he like a 6th-round pick and won the Triple Crown for wide receivers last year? But even then, like, he was really good in college and just went to a smaller college that we didn't know about. Tom Brady is everyone's go-to. They're going to go to Tom Brady. But even that feels like he went to Michigan. You know what I mean? He played at a big-time program, and there was some weird things happening because a baseball player decided to come back and play college football, and so he kind of lost his spot. I just throw my hands up. Dwight Clark is a great one. I mean, he had very little catches at Clemson over a 4-year career and ends up having a borderline he was a Ring of Honor for the 49ers, but a borderline Pro Bowl level yearly career with the 49ers for the 9 years he was here.
Yeah.
10th-round pick.
And George Kittle, again, he dropped in the draft because of injury.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, but everybody thought that it wasn't based on his ability.
Yeah.
So I think that Brock Purdy right now, because of where he was drafted, because of that line, because of the expectations or not expectations, because of the situation.
Yes.
We really haven't seen anything like it in a really long time.
I mean, Jeremy Lin comes to mind, and it looks like we've got him here. Look, guys, give me a thumbs up when we're ready. Are we ready? All right, we're going to go straight to Baldy. I'm just going to shut up because I want to hear from the most incredible football mind there is, Brian Baldinger.
He breaks down plays better than anyone.
I mean, this is like Shark Week now. And you know what Baker Mayfield is? He's chum. Look at these sharks. You think you're getting away from those 4 angry sharks? It's Shark Week. It's time to eat. Make the read. Urgency. That's the name of the game right here. Urgency. Now, on it. He's on it. Touchdown. Beautiful throw.
He's our 95.7 The Game NFL insider, Brian Baldinger.
Baldy. Bonte's out this week. It's good to see your face and that smile with that NFL logo in the backdrop. If you're watching on YouTube, you can check it out right now. Brian Baldinger, just one of the great football minds that I know. Baldy, let's start right here. All right, and I want to introduce you to Alan Stiles over here. He's filling in for Bonte. Brock Purdy.
Good morning to you.
Hey, Brian.
Let's start with Brock Purdy. I feel like every single week it's the same question. Is this real? Are teams starting to figure him out? Should I worry about the dud? Or is there something that he's putting out on film that Pete Carroll can take advantage of that's a massive flaw? When you're evaluating and watching Brock Purdy week to week, is he getting better? Is he the same really, really, really good player? Or is there things that you're seeing that should worry me as we head into the playoffs?
I don't think so, Joe. I mean, I've watched every throw now since he took over for Jimmy in the first quarter against Miami. So almost 6 games. He was 15 of 20 last week. He threw 3 of those 15 completions were touchdowns. I don't know if any of them were the first read. I think he's getting better. I feel like, this is not an easy offense, Joe. I mean, there is a motion and a shift at least and on every single play. So just coordinating pre-snap to get to the right formation. And then, there's been quarterbacks, I'm not going to call out Brett Favre, but Brett Favre, he hated pre-snap motions because every time your offense moved, the defense moved. And so he had to readjust. But, he has to do all this. He's been doing it since day one, and he does it without a flaw. I mean, we haven't seen them burn any timeouts. We haven't seen them not get lined up correctly. I could point out a couple of protection breakdowns. Sometimes that's his fault. Sometimes it's the line's fault. But they've been few and far between. He usually gets out of harm's way. I mean, I'm talking about sort of the esoteric part of the game. Forget about just getting the ball to the open receiver. But he does it, and he makes it look easy. And so, Pete Carroll and his staff, they'll be the first team to have seen him twice, right? So now we'll see if there's something that they saw or the defender saw, whether it's Quandre Diggs or, whoever it might be, where they go, okay, if he gets in this formation, this situation, this is what he's doing, maybe we can jump around. There's some things the second time around, maybe like a hitter, going to see the pitcher for the second time. Maybe they're a little bit better, but I don't think we're going to see like the proverbial shoe drop right here, Joe.
Baldy, Diamador Lenore has had a rough week. It's only Tuesday, but he's had a rough week so far, in terms of what happened with him, not just last week, but the week before that as well. Do you think because of that, these secondary issues are a bit overblown, or do you think this is something that Niner fans should worry about in terms of the Niners defense?
Well, I think you always have to be concerned. Balls, you're going to see DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett here on Saturday afternoon. If you blink, those guys are going to be behind you. So I'm sure they're going to get tested. How you play the ball in the air on most Saturdays or Sundays kind of determines the outcome of the game. Almost did against the Raiders. There was some plays last week, obviously, second play, but of the game, they were in position to make that play. They didn't make it. So you always have to be concerned because, if you go all the way back to week 1 against Chicago, there's Justin Fields getting out of the pocket in a monsoon and, he's rolling to his left and everybody's chasing him and he sees Dante Pettis on the other side of the field. Next thing you know, Dante Pettis is scoring a touchdown. So, yes, I think you always have to be concerned.
Baldy, staying on that side of the football, we'll get back to the offense in a second. NFL sack leader, Nick Bosa, 18.5 sacks. You look at all the advanced numbers, number 1 in sacks, number 1 in quarterback hits, pass rushing productivity, number 1 by PFF, penalties drawn, number 1, pass rush win rate, number 2, pressures, number 2, tackles for loss, number 2. Is he your defensive player of the year?
Yes. Yeah, because, look, I remember seeing Nick before they played Tampa Bay, I don't know, a month ago or so ago. And at that time, I had Max Crosby as the defensive player of the year. And they were like tied for sacks at that time or something like that. But, Max was playing every single snap of every game. So Nick sees me and he's like, oh, so Max is the MVP, huh? So he's very understated.
No, Baldy, he said it like this. Oh, so Max Crosby's the MVP, huh?
Right. How could that guy be an absolute terror? But with that voice. But so, he's just kind of understated. Hey, so Max is the MVP. I'm like, hey, Nick, I go, that's not personal. I go, the guy plays every single snap. And he just looks at me. And without missing a beat, Joe, he says, yeah, but I'm getting ready for the postseason.
Oh, wow.
So I can't play every snap. I got 3 more games or 4 more games to play in the postseason. So, Max will be done in, first week in January. So, and he was right. And when he said it, it kind of perked me up going, okay, I respect Max all the way and how much he plays and all the tackles, but Nick has a bigger purpose, in this whole thing.
Yeah, they're getting ready for, bigger and better things. Baldy, out here in the Bay Area, it's wet, it's windy, trees are flying everywhere. How do you think that could affect the game plan, if at all, for Kyle Shanahan? They like to run the football anyway, and they like their checkdowns. But if you're Kyle Shanahan, how much do you look at the weather in terms of, okay, we should plan on this, but if it doesn't rain that much, we'll open it up? Can you be that finite with it, or do you just have to wait and see?
The short answer, you have to wait and see. Mm-hmm. Ball security is everything in these games. But I'll just quickly, one day I roll into Green Bay, summer training camp, and they're indoors, Don Hudson Center. And there's Brett Favre, the quarterback at the time, and he's got a ball boy next to him, and he got a big bucket of water. And they're taking every football, and they're dunking it in the water, and they hand it to Brett, and Brett throws a wet ball. It was just literally, he was practicing his wet ball throws that day. So, you can practice this stuff. Obviously, it's not getting a whole lot of rain on any kind of a basis in the Bay Area. From my recollection, it's been a pretty long drought. But, look, anytime the ball is wet, anytime you're on a wet surface, you always think about footing. You think about guys slipping. You think about ball security, hanging on to the ball, all those things. I know, I'm friends with Ryan Jensen, the center for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. During the pandemic, he gets to know Tom Brady. They're at a high school field. And Tom Brady basically gives him a dissertation every day on this high school field about snapping a ball. Ryan's been doing it his whole life. Where to put the towel on a wet day, where the ball comes up on a goal line, shotgun snaps, wet ball snaps. All this stuff matters. It's all, you got to kind of practice all of it because when you're in the moment, you just can't afford to have a center quarterback exchange problem because of, a wet ground or whatever. So all those things, get magnified when it's sudden death.
Baldy, let's rat-a-tat-tat a couple offensive players and just kind of what you've seen from them this year and how you're feeling about them heading into the year. It feels like George Kittle has added elements to his game. I didn't know he had the toe-tapping ability that he showcased in the last month.
I agree. The touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. I mean, all those things, he's got all those skills that all the other tight ends that we always talk about. Travis Kelce, he's got all those. Run after the catch, finding the opening, making himself available for the quarterback. They paid him. I remember when him and Kelce were that offseason, like literally they signed within days of each other. And I forget which one signed first. I think Kittle did. And then Kelce signed right after. He set the bar. He got like $1 more than George. He's in that category, and they're using him like that at this time.
Yeah, and then what about Brandon Ayuk, 1,000-yard season? It feels like he's really coming on, and the connection between him and Brock Purdy is really starting to become solidified.
That's strong. It's a very strong connection. You never know how these things, how they take off, and what a quarterback sees and what a receiver does. Like, I mean, if you look at a game that's going to be played Monday night, like Dak doesn't look like he's got any time with his receivers right now. And it really, if you're a Cowboy fan, you're frustrated. But it doesn't look like he has any, like he doesn't ever go away from Brandon too soon or too early on some of these routes. He's a good route runner. And the problem with route runners is, yes, they can win, but your quarterback better be patient and allow them to win. And sometimes quarterbacks, they're going through the progressions like a Ginsu knife going through, one of your steaks, Joe. And, they leave them too fast. And so I don't see that problem right now between Brock and Ayuk.
Baldy, you could say that McCaffrey is a perfect player for a lot of coaches, but specifically for Kyle Shanahan for what he likes to do. Is there a better football player? If he could have created a football player, an offensive football player, would he have just created Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I mean, it's good. I think it's a good note. I saw Christian McCaffrey in Carolina catch 100 balls one year, and like every play went to him. He had 400 touches, and like nobody else touched the ball. And you can fall in love with a player like that, and you can wear him out, and you can overdo it. And I feel like just the balance that they have struck is perfect. And how, it's not easy as a play caller to balance it all out. But I feel like the way he's balancing it out, Kyle, that is. And the way that he's using them is just right. Like, he's pounding them in the middle enough. He's getting the ball on swing pass. I mean, all the stuff that he's doing. I feel like, the different formations we're seeing right now and the motions, I feel like they're in a good groove with each other.
What about Deebo Samuel? Like, they've kind of had him on ice because he was injured for quite some time. Down year, I think most people, like if I said before the year we didn't know McCaffrey was going to come, like, hey, Debo's going to have less than 1,000 scrimmage yards, we'd be like, ugh, that's not good. I feel like they've got something cooked up for the playoffs. Have you noticed anything different with Deebo Samuel? I know it's his first game back in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were kind of easing him back. They got him a couple of touches. It's not the Debo we saw last year in the postseason or in certain games because they don't need him to be. They've got, a committee of running backs that are healthy. Elijah's back, and McCaffrey. I mean, they've got that position. Now, they could still put him back there in various ways. And I think you might see something this weekend just because we know what he's like with the ball in his hands. Debo has to be patient here. I mean, he can't be that guy that's got the body language screaming for the ball. He can't be that guy. And I think he knows that. He got paid. He's got his bank, which is good, and he earned it. But right now, like, his time will come, and the worst thing you can do is force it. Just the play, the big plays happen because they're well executed plays, not because we're going to put Debo here and this is going to be a big play. Big plays happen because of the execution of all 10 guys around that player or around the quarterback. And I think Debo's smart enough to know all that, and he certainly knows that they've got a really good formula. What they're doing right now, he was not a part of it during an injury. And so when he got hurt against Tampa, so he missed a few games. But I do feel like there is plays on Kyle's sheet that are for Debo that we'll see this weekend.
You know, Baldy, when we started out this morning, Shasky was talking about how he's nervous that the clunker is coming for Brock Purdy. And I've seen some things, Brock Purdy, we were talking about it. I saw a heat chart last week that he doesn't like throwing more than 10 yards to his right, and all these things are coming out. Is there anything that you've seen specifically that you could see the Seahawks keying in on? All right, Brock Purdy, he tends to do this in this situation. Is there anything you've seen that detailed or not even to that degree yet?
I haven't seen it. I mean, I know those metrics are out there. I try not to pay too close attention to them. I try to look at the game a little bit differently than what a metric tells me.
I hate analytics, Baldy. I love data. Well, I mean, look, but I hate analytics.
They're like what Charles Barkley said. They're just paying a stat person. I mean, in a little bit, they're like that. I don't know that you game plan because, defensively, if you're Pete Carroll and his staff, I don't think you're game planning because of the things that you just mentioned or things that are out there. I mean, they could drive you crazy. There's high-low concepts against certain coverages. Tariq Woolen is a really good player. All those things are out there. So I see you're kind of waving here, Joe. So.
No, I was just talking to Alan. My bad. What is it that Seattle does well that would concern the 49ers as you look at this matchup this weekend? Because I don't want to sleep on the legend that is Pete Carroll. I'm watching the national championship game last night. This guy's got a Super Bowl and a national championship. I mean, he's in very, very small company with Jimmy Johnson and obviously from Nebraska, whose name's evading me.
I mean, look, the one thing about Pete, and he told me this a long time ago, I've never forgotten it. He said even when he was at USC, and he's never been afraid to play young guys. Well, he started 5 rookies. Okay, those rookies now are going into their 18th game. Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, Charles Cross. I mean, Abe Lucas. I mean, he got 5 rookies out there. Boye Mafe. He got 5 rookies starting for their team. So, but he said that, the one thing about if you have the right rookies, and I believe they do, they might make mistakes early. They might get you beat early, but they're going to help you win late. And so Tariq Woolen is one heck of a player. He's just a great player. He's a great kid. You want him on your team. He's a star. And so, he got beat by on a touchdown by Ayuk in that last game because his eyes were in the wrong place in a run fit and early down. And he admitted it to me. He told me about it the following week, walked me through the whole play, went back and watched it. I saw who he was looking at, and Ayuk got behind him. They double moved him, and but the quarterback was really patient on the play because he got whacked on the play when he threw it, and he knew he had to stay in there and take the hit in order to do it. It's like one of the great plays that Brock has had, but they got behind Seattle. Look, Quandre Diggs is a problem.
Yeah,
the problem in the middle of the field. We just saw the safeties last week in San Francisco. Whether it's Gibson, whatever. I mean, they all had these interceptions. Odom, he's a problem in the middle of the field. You get a loose ball, you get a ball that's not accurate, you get a ball that gets fluttered because you get hit. Like all those things, that guy is a thief. So I mean, you can't worry about these things. You got to put you got to go execute. But they've got guys on the other side that are very capable of making big plays.
Baldy, where are you going to be this weekend?
Well, I'm doing the Hula Bowl on Saturday.
Oh, so, nice. Who's in that?
Me out of. And then I'm doing some games on Sunday as the analyst for Sky Sports, which is a pretty cool format. When America goes to commercials during these games, they come to the studio, and the rest of the world listens to Baldy break down the plays.
I like that. Sky Sports has a lot of golf stuff over there. That's pretty cool.
They do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Look at you, so international. Cue the Be Legit music. Well, Baldy, thanks for coming on with us. We got a huge game this weekend. Hope to see you soon, and we love hearing you break everything down. You're all in on Brock like we are as a Bay Area native, so let's do it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I can't wait. First game out of the box this weekend. It should be a lot of fun watching.
You look fantastic right now, by the way. The suit, just everything. You're just incredible. We got to get you a headset, though.
If you would have known, the last 24 hours, it's amazing how this happened. All right. Anyway, good to be with you guys.
We love you. Thank you, Baldy. Brian Baldinger. If you missed the interview or